Good morning, everyone. You're very welcome to today's session of Reboot Your Business Through Your Business Development Plan. My name is Michael Bozene, and we're delighted to be providing you this series from Griffith College, Dublin, Cork, and Limerick in association with Chambers Ireland. Welcome to all the businesses that have joined us today, those who are part of Chambers Ireland and other SME businesses throughout the country. We really appreciate you being here with us. We also very much appreciate you sending in your feedback and your questions, which we build into the sessions. Today's session is our bonus webinar, so you're very welcome, and it's going to be about business banking, and it'll be a little bit shorter than the other sessions. We're delighted to have somebody from the banking sector here with us today, as well as our team from Griffith College. So as always, invite you to check out the website, have a look at the Griffith website at the resources. On the course page in particular, we have all of the presentations that have been given so far in this series, the workbook, and also the links to the mentoring that was mentioned the other day. So do have a look. And also we invite you to engage with us on social media using the hashtag Reboot2020. So I hope you enjoyed the session today, and we will take some questions at the end if there is time. We do appreciate you being here with us today. I'd like to hand over now to my colleague, Geraldine McGinn, who will bring us through today's session and introduce today's speaker. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael. Good morning, everybody. You're very welcome. And I would also like to welcome Deirdre Moore to today's bonus webinar. Deirdre is one of 11 heads of business banking in the AIB and represents Dublin South. This session follows on from some queries that you had after our session 5, how do I manage my cash flow in a crisis? So some questions came in about banking as a result of that. And while Deirdre represents the AIB, other banks will have similar advice and suggestions about approaching them and about thinking about your business and money to do with the business. Her slides are available on the programme website, as well as additional resources that she has kindly offered to us. So without further ado, I'll hand you over now to Deirdre and her role in how to approach the bank. Thanks very much.
Okay, good morning, everybody. As Geraldine so kindly introduced me as Deirdre Moore, and I head up the business banking team based here in Dublin South in Court. So essentially, AIB is structured in such a way that we have business banking teams all around the country with dedicated relationship managers to serve the needs of the businesses across all the various sectors that operate. So while I am going to talk about some of the solutions that AIB has on offer, some of the government solutions that are out there that all the banks administer on behalf of the government, I would like to acknowledge that all the banks are working very closely together through the Banks Federation, and we are offering similar solutions. So if you don't bank with AIB, I hope that the information that I'm providing will be helpful, but also I would absolutely tell you to approach your own bank in terms of seeking support. So what I'm going to walk through is in about 20 minutes, 25 minutes, is some slides, as I mentioned, around the supports that are available as a result of COVID-19 from the banks, some of the supports available from the government that we administer, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about cash flow and how you might prepare cash flows and approach the bank for support during these challenging times. Just to acknowledge, these are extremely challenging times, and I really absolutely understand that a lot of you are at home listening here from your kitchens, etc. Businesses are closed. I think Monday we'll see obviously quite a return of a number of businesses. The traffic will probably increase. We can see it that people are starting to get out and about a little bit more. And I'm sure you're all thinking very much about the timeline and the phases and how it impacts you and your business in terms of getting back to work. So we are very definitely here to support through all those phases. And we really would encourage you, or I would really encourage you, to do reach out and to talk to your local bank, your local branch, and get talking now, even if you aren't open, as to how you might approach getting back to business. So without further ado, I might put the slides up. Thank you so much, Michael. Just before I jump in, I suppose some of the questions are like, what have we seen so far? So we're actually into week 10, essentially, I suppose since the COVID disaster crisis was really first came to fore. And in AIB and probably in most banks, I suppose the biggest support mechanism we have seen requested so far is the payment break option. So we have processed over 50,000 payment break options for customers across the personal and business space. So that would be your mortgages, personal loans and business loans. So we processed about 13,000 different business loans. So there's two things in that in that number, I suppose, is first of all, we'd obviously have an awful lot more customers in that, both personally and business customers. So some customers obviously don't have loans, so they wouldn't be break, but also other businesses are still trading, be it in normal circumstances, normal kind of over-the-counter trading or online, etc., and therefore haven't availed of the payment break. So that is a positive in some respects, that the whole country hasn't completely come to a standstill, and there are businesses out there that have continued to trade. Having said that, some businesses just haven't yet availed of that, and that is still available. So I might just turn to slide 2 there, Michael. Thank you. So these are some of the supports available from AIB, and as I say, these supports are also available from most of the financial partners out there, the main banks indeed. So the first one there is the 6-month payment break. So initially we announced a 3-month payment break, and there are the numbers I've just given you. And that payment break is still available. Even now, if you hadn't availed it at 3 months, you can still avail it at 3 months, and it is shortly to be extended to 6 months. So in the context of the timeline for the announcement of that 3-month payment break, it was March. The first facilities rolling off the 3-month payment break will be coming up now shortly in June. So most banks, again, will be writing to everybody who availed of the payment break already. So there won't be any action required by the customers who have already availed of that payment break, and they will be offering the payment break solution for the further 3 months. So in the context of AIB, and I think some of the other banks, the existing 3-month was an extension. Essentially, the 3-month was that you didn't pay principal or interest for the 3 months. And at the end of that 3-month term, your repayments will go up by the relevant amount to repay the loan still within the term. The second stage of the payment break, it is not quite fully ironed out in terms of how it will operate, but most likely it will be an extension of the loan as opposed to a further increase in the repayments, just in the context of affordability. Putting another 3-month payments onto the existing term could have consequences for affordability, and the banks are very cognizant of that issue. So more detail will follow on that. As I say, the first payment breaks are coming up for review in June. So in terms of the other options, so that's just the AIB website for your information, or the dedicated phone line if you still wish to avail of that payment break. You can go into the website and seek a callback, or you can phone that number directly. Obviously, at the very beginning, those phone lines were extremely busy, and you may have had to wait for a callback, a little bit like the hospitals all filling up at once. We obviously only have a certain number of staff, or the banks, they did redeploy staff to answer phones, etc. But there was a little bit of a congestion in the early stages. We really caught up on that. So in terms of sort of more normalized requests coming through on those lines, you certainly can get through it at this time. In terms of the other solutions that are available, again, not just from AIB, these are our standard suite of working capital solutions, but obviously very much to the fore in the current COVID-19 pandemic. So overdraft, everybody would probably be familiar with that product. Business credit line is similar to an overdraft, but it is essentially repaid sort of more on a repayment basis. An overdraft is on demand. Prompt Pay is just a shorter term facility to pay bills like insurance, like your accountant's bills, like legal bills, like any sort of annual bills, and they can be spread over a period of 11 months. And again, those facilities are available. The business current account fees obviously were posted in February, and we have a facility where you can seek deferral of those fees and pay them all, spread them over September, October, and November, when hopefully businesses are back. And again, you can avail of that by just going in and requesting that online. So when you come to us or to any bank really looking for any of these supports, you will have to sort of go through a series of information gathering exercise. So we will be asking questions around: how has the business been impacted? Are you closed? Are you open? What are the impacts of the COVID? Reduction in sales, increased costs, your staff, your supply chain. And that's the type of discussion questions we would have with you wherever you present to discuss your banking flow piece. So just in the context of, sorry, just might stay back on the last one, Michael, for 1 second. Perfect. So just in the context of, and one of the questions was, you know, should I go to my own bank or should I, you know, shop around at this time? At this time, your own bank has the most information about you. And I think all of the banks are really trying to support primarily their own customer base. So I would encourage you to talk to your own bank at this time. As I say, there is a lot of information we hold in relation to your transactions, etc. And therefore we can be as much quicker in terms of responding to your needs. Just in relation to other solutions there, some of you may be trading internationally. And obviously is a part of our suite of solutions there. So it is really important to keep an eye to any foreign currency risks that you're running. And our treasury desks are obviously still open. It is great if you can match your purchases and sales in the one currency and you have your natural hedge, as we call it. So for instance, buying raw materials in sterling, if you're selling in the UK, then you have a natural hedge for sterling. But if you don't, obviously, I think I would again encourage you to continue to talk to our team in Treasury, and again, any team in any of the banks in Treasury open. Then the final solution on this slide is we have obviously merchant services, which is your Visa machines taking online payments or taking payments at point of sale. That is a very significant solution at this time, and you'll be aware that all the banks increased their tap facility to €50 from €30 to assist with contactless payments during the pandemic. But there are a lot of solutions available through our merchant services team regarding alternative payment acceptance solutions, particularly around distance selling. So what I would say to you, if you are a Visa merchant with any of the banks, again, contact your bank around the options available to you from your merchant service, and then essentially see how you can implement those solutions. Again, if you're returning to work, you will need to maybe make sure everything is still working in your sites, that you're ready to go. So again, I would encourage you to check everything's working and contact merchant services. And just the last point around, I suppose, getting back to business and the other supports available, is your insurance cover. Most businesses have insurance cover. As I mentioned, we do have a facility to pay that over 12 months. But it is to contact your insurance company if you haven't already done so. So pull out your policy and just see what insurance cover is there around business resumption, etc., and make sure you're utilising that. Okay, Michael, sorry, on to the next slide then. Okay, so in the next slide, I'm just going to talk through some of the government COVID-19 supports that are available for business. And these are really the supports that the bank are involved in administering. Most of these supports have a level of government guarantee. However, they are credit facilities and they're not per se free money. They do have to be paid back. And what the government have done is outsourced the credit review part to the banks. So we assess those applications in line with standard bank credit processes and credit standards. So it is important that people recognize that this is debt. It's not a grant, and therefore we do assess it in the same ways we would assess a facility that you're borrowing from the bank. On the other side is if there is, if the customer defaults, the banks have the 80% guarantee to the government. So just looking at the first one there, so the SBCI is the Strategic Banking Corporation of Ireland. It's been around for a number of years. You may have availed of funding in some of their previous funds. The most recent fund they launched was to address Brexit. That fund was not fully drawn, and essentially they repurposed that fund in March to be used for the COVID-19 supports. So currently, the fund it's spread out among a number of banks. So we get an allocation that we effectively, our customers can apply for. Currently, a lot of the banks, the allocation, it was on a first come, first serve. So we would put by the allocation based on an eligibility code. At the moment, a lot of the banks, that fund is set aside, for a better word, for customers who have already applied for an eligibility code, and we're waiting for them to come back with information to potentially sanction a facility. So you may be hearing from your branches or your that fund is currently allocated, and you're effectively go on a waiting list, for a better word. However, the Strategic Banking Corporation of Ireland are looking at increasing that fund in the amount of 250 million across all the banks, and they're in the process of just agreeing that amount and agreeing the allocations to the various banks. So I wouldn't let it put you off at the moment. I'd say go in, get your eligibility code, contact your bank, and essentially start the process of seeking a credit sanction. So just to summarize what this fund is available, it's a 1 to 3 year loan term. Excuse me. It's for amounts of 25,000 up to 1.5 million. It's available for SMEs and micro enterprises, and essentially it's in the current scenario, you can avail of an interest-only facility of up to 12 months on this particular fund. The fund is going to be available right up to March 2021, or until all funds are used up. So what's required here is you need to go onto the SBI site in the first instance, and the website address is there, and you need to get an eligibility code from the SBCI. So that's your first step in this process. The eligibility code is based on a few factors. It's quite a straightforward process. You have to do a very short business plan to the SBCI, and you have to answer a few questions around how you've been impacted by COVID. So essentially it is a reduction in turnover by 15%. So I'd have to say there's very few businesses that haven't seen that type of reduction. So in essence, most businesses do qualify here. So that's the SBCI fund. There is a second fund, it's not highlighted here on this slide. It's called the Future Growth Loan Scheme Fund. And again, it's also SBCI backed. That was launched earlier this year and was fully subscribed. So they are in the process of putting further funds available into this Future Growth Loan Scheme, which again, for businesses trying to expand and grow, this will be available, I would expect by June. They will have allocated the amounts out to the banks, and the benefit of this scheme is it's a much longer term repayment schedule. It's 8 to 10 years. The SBCI COVID scheme is quite short. It's 1 to 3 years. So it's really ideally suited for working capital requirements over the next 6 months that you just haven't got your normal working capital flow. So you're essentially spreading that working capital requirement over a repayment period of 3 years. As I say, the Future Growth Loan Scheme, FGLS, is a much longer term repayment. And as I say, more details will be available shortly on that once that scheme is relaunched and the allocations are advised to the various banks. Moving on there to the next one mentioned is the Credit Guarantee Scheme. Again, this has been available and out there for quite a while. And the purpose of this really for businesses, the 3 barriers to accessing finance for some businesses: inadequate collateral, so no security, and the banks do look for security in most instances for loan facilities. It might be a sector or technology or something novel and new that's maybe perceived by financial providers as higher risk. And again, may be something that would qualify under the credit guarantee scheme, or has been used in the past for refinancing caused by an exit of an SME lender from the Irish market. So again, this is available under COVID-19. The key features of the scheme, it's for facilities of 10,000 up to 1 million. It's a longer term there. It's a term of 7 years. They do have an interest only option for, I think, the first 6 months. And again, you can have it as a term loan, demand loan, or you can use it for performance bonds, which some customers have utilized in the past. So again, the website is there just to look up for a little bit more information, but the banks administer this scheme. So again, you have to apply to the banks where you effectively haven't been able to access finance under normal banking rules, I suppose, or processes. You may seek to avail of this credit guarantee scheme. The third one here on the slide is Microfinance Ireland. Again, a government body here that was set up specifically to help financing smaller entities, microfinance entities, and being businesses with less than 10 employees and up to 2 million in annual turnover. So these loans are administered through the banks, but also through the local enterprise offices. And the loans are available for 5,000 up to 50,000. So they're smaller end, and essentially, sorry, my phone, turn it off. And typically up to 3 years. Also, you can avail of a 6-month interest free period here, again during COVID-19, with the loan being repaid over the remaining 30 months of the 36-month loan. There's discounted rates available here for this scheme as well, and the rate is 4.5% if you submit through your local enterprise office or you go directly to the bank. It's slightly higher if you go directly to Microfinance Ireland, and again, they're taking applications via their website. Sorry, just to refer back to the SBCI pricing, that is 4%. Sorry, I don't think I commented on that. The final option here, or support here, is Enterprise Ireland. Now, Enterprise Ireland are quasi, in terms of how they assess, similar to the banks, they assess all facilities they give in terms of repayment capacity, as in your ability to repay that back over a specific term. So they have launched, obviously, a significant support there through a sustainable enterprise fund for businesses employing a minimum of 10 employees in specified manufacturing and international traded service businesses. It's for amounts of 100,000 to 800,000 per business, and they do provide funding alongside bank funding if you qualify, and other sources. So it's not one or other. You can avail of both sources of financing. EI operate through a range of specialist advisors. So they have their own business advisors nationally, the EI team, and then they have a panel of advisors that they recommend you use to present your application to Enterprise Ireland. It's quite a detailed application, so it isn't something they suggest or we suggest that you try to do it on your own. So if you have any if you think if you qualify there for Enterprise Ireland supports, I would access their website and seek to talk to somebody on their panel, one of the advisors on the panel there, to assist you in putting an application together. So just moving on to slide 4. Okay, so I know you all, or some of you may have attended the session on Tuesday around cash flow management. And I think in that session, the two gentlemen from Griffith College went through in quite detail how to prepare a cash flow. And I think they pulled up on screen a cash flow and put numbers in and showed how essentially it operates, your inflows, your outflows, essentially an Excel spreadsheet. So that is really important part of coming to the bank in terms of accessing finance at this time. It's an important part of coming to the bank at any time, but probably even more important at this time. So a lot of businesses, and I know some of the questions are around cash flow that came in advance of this webinar, and really is about, you know, I really don't know where my business is at. How can I prepare a cash flow? How detailed do these cash projections need to be? You know, what do I need to put in? And a few other questions around the same lines. So what we'd say is we understand and appreciate these are very challenging times in terms of even kind of doing a cash flow, but it is still an essential tool to try and establish what is your current cash and what are the draws on that cash over the coming weeks and months. So really your starting point is looking at what is in your bank at the moment, what have you got, and try to plan your cash flow needs over the coming weeks and months. So we do also have a cash flow planner on our website. Again, when you pull it down, it just comes into an Excel spreadsheet and it calculates as you go along. It's got all the formulas already built into that cash flow. So really, you need to start with your working account, what's currently available to you. What are your immediate cash needs? Payroll, PRSI, VAT, suppliers, or debtor payments. And obviously I refer to debtor payments there. And again, if you need to conserve cash, I would absolutely encourage you all to apply for the payment breaks through your bank. So you need to start to prepare your using either the tool that Griffith College already gave you last week, or going into AIB's website or any of the bank websites which will have cash flow tools on them. And really it's a cash flow on a weekly basis, rolling up into a monthly basis for the minimum next 6 months, and really probably out to 12 if you can. And really what you're doing is modeling various scenarios of what your own expected cash flow is. And really there is nobody who knows your business better than you do. So the banks will be here to support, and we're talking to you about what you've made and your assumptions around that cash flow. But really you are the person who knows your business best. Having said that, none of us have been through this type of crisis before, where obviously the social distancing and the impact that has on businesses, etc. So we are trying to muddle through, for a better word, together and try and work through this in terms of trying to come up with a cash flow scenario. So after you've looked at your what's in your account, etc., the next thing you really need to look at is your fixed and variable costs. And what has to be paid and what costs can you cut out of your business at this time. So really is, can you get cash in? Can you get it in faster? What bills do you have to pay? And really is every line item is something that you need to review and challenge for yourself and say, what can you cut out of your business at this time? You need to look at your debtor book and see, can you get payments sooner? Perhaps even at a discount. Everybody is looking for cash. Cash is king at the moment, so people may be prepared to reduce amounts owed to get money in sooner. On your fixed and variable costs, obviously you need to see what you can defer right now, and obviously bank loans are one of those things that you can defer, and obviously all the government supports around deferment of VAT and deferment of PRSI, etc. And again, the government website is very detailed there about what is available. In terms of supplier payments, you may or may not be able to defer some of those. And again, you need to look there in terms of restocking your business. What are the stocking requirements to reopen, or if you're currently open, what sort of stock do you need to purchase at this time? And what sort of credit terms, first off, can you avail of from your creditors? And then obviously build those into your cash flow model, and that will get you to a point of knowing what cash requirements you may have in terms of support from the banks via the working capital solutions or some of the government solutions that I've already referred to. The other thing you need to obviously incorporate there is what are the costs associated with reopening your business. So obviously Heather Humphreys announced last week all of the various requirements of businesses in this reopening in the COVID to ensure we keep our staff and our customers safe. So what are those costs? Is it screens? Is it signage? Is it deep clean, etc.? And again, only you will know your own business better. Really important to utilize your business connections. So you're all obviously doing that already by even tuning into this particular webinar. The chambers are there to support, the local enterprise offices are very much there to support. Yes, everybody is working remotely, but there is huge support available that you can access at this time. Your financial advisors, again, they may be working remotely, but if your accountant, again, would be able to give you good advice about the supports that are available. So I would encourage you to to make contact with your accountant. And they also can support you in terms of doing that cash flow. So, you know, encourage you to make contact there. The other supports available are industry bodies. So the industry bodies are coming out very loudly, obviously, around supports that are required. And they're people that you should make contact with just to see what suggestions they have around reopening, social distancing, and how that all impact on your capacity, your revenues, etc. So I just, again, they're all the, so at this time, I would use every support that's available to you. Again, coming back to the banks, which is where I sit, is I would be contacting your local bank if you need support. And you can do that through all the mediums available online, through phoning our direct call centres, who are all being manned, and through the hours of generally at this time 9 to 5:30. Out of hours is not so much available at the moment, just again due to social distancing. And also calling into your branch. And just to say, all AIB branches are currently open with the exception of the college branches. And that is our stated aim. And I believe, as with most banks, is to keep our branches open. They are a lot quieter. So obviously with social distancing, we don't allow as many people in at this time, but you can drop into your local branch to discuss any requirements there. So that is essentially giving you a little bit more detail around cash flow. So maybe just to acknowledge some of the questions that came in. Question there, is it a good idea to get a moratorium? Well, again, this is down to your own cash flow. The loan still has to be repaid regardless of if you take the moratorium. So, you know, it'll be paid at the back end, or at the moment you have increased repayments if you've availed of the 3-month moratorium. So it is there for everybody to avail of. So it is back to, if that is a cash drain in your business, why wouldn't you avail of that payment break at the moment? And it is now going to be up to 6 months. And just to say, that has no impact on your credit rating. That is not normally, if you take a payment break or you look for a restructure, that obviously is looked at in the context of your credit rating and what impact that might have. Up to 6 months now, there is no impact on your credit rating. So just please do avail of that particular solution now if you need it. In terms of, are the banks lending? Again, I refer to going to your own bank at this time, because your own bank, obviously, we are trying to support our own customers, is going to have the most knowledge about your business and will be as the most supportive that they can. So all banks, including ourselves, we still have a full range of the lending products available, including all the working capital products I've just talked through. So yes, we definitely are open for business. Will the bank continue to support my overdraft? Well, again, an overdraft is a demand facility, and it is generally reviewed and renewed on an annual basis. So if you feel you need to talk about that overdraft facility and the impact that COVID's having on your business and possibly the requirement to increase that, again, I think I've covered that off here in terms of the solution available and in terms of the information that you would need to prepare to demonstrate that working capital requirement. So that is very much back to your cash flow planner and showing what that working capital requirement is. Another question there, I have some cash in the bank and I need to buy some equipment. Am I better to use cash or to take out a loan? Again, cash is obviously king at the moment, but really it is about going back and preparing that cash flow planner and saying, you know, you will have to repay the loan, obviously. So it's back to what repayment capacity have you in your business? What is the best term to use for that particular loan? And is it better to keep your cash now and spread out the repayments over a period? Similar to in current circumstances, and just trying to get into a more normalized discussion, a lot of customers spread out their insurance bill over a period of 11 months rather than paying it as one lump sum. And as I mentioned there, that's your insurance premium in financing or prompt pay option. Is it better at this time maybe to spread out the repayments and conserve your cash for other things? Okay, I think they were the main thrust of the questions that I received in advance. There were some questions, I think, about Enterprise Ireland, and Geraldine is going to address them back in terms of sites and the supports available there through Enterprise Ireland. Again, as I say, I am representing the finance AIB specifically here, so I wouldn't have all the ins and outs of the Enterprise Ireland solutions. So I think that addresses most of, I think, the questions that we have received. So moving on to the last slide here, I'll just summarize quickly the supports available from AIB. And again, as I say, going into any of the bank's websites, you will find these supports. So that's just the quick links for you. So to request the payment break, that is the web address, and you get a call back, or you can phone the payment break line. And you do need to phone the payment break line as opposed to the normal 0818 number for direct banking. The government supports, again, the website addresses are there, and they're also in the presentation itself. Really would encourage you to speak to somebody directly. So speak to a direct business advisor on the line there. That's not the payment break line. That's now to speak to somebody about your business and your business needs. Or over to the left there is call into your local branch or speak to somebody on the business banking team. If you have a dedicated what we call business advisor or relationship manager, you will know that, and I would encourage you at this time to contact them by email and look for a call bank or call them. Most people in business banking teams, certainly in AIB, probably 2/3 of our business banking teams are working remotely, but they are available on their mobile phones, and their desk phones have been diverted, and they're available on their emails. They're working obviously on our AIB systems remotely, so they have access to everything, all the information that they would normally have access to if they were in the office. So please, again, do contact those. And just some of the other supports that are out there and available for you is we have done a series of podcasts around various sectors. We always have a focus on trying to support people from a learning perspective around specific sectors, and we've repurposed that now to try and support people during COVID. And we have on those podcasts, we have people from industry, people from companies similar to yourselves, speaking about their experiences. So quite valuable podcasts maybe to listen to. I suppose at this time there is so much information out there, you do have to try and decide what is relevant to you. You could spend all day looking at webinars and listening to podcasts, etc., and maybe getting somewhat confused by the amount of information out there. So sometimes it is trying to distill that information down into manageable bite sizes that really apply to your own business. And again, this is back to using the local enterprise offices, using Chambers Ireland, availing of the mentoring program through SkillNet to help you find your way, I suppose, through this myriad of information that is available, and actually to bring that down in a funnel into what is appropriate and relevant to you and your business. So I'd just like to summarize by saying, first of all, thank you for your time. I hope I have covered some of the things that may be on your mind. Again, I can't cover every single question here, but what I really would encourage you is every business is unique in some ways. You know your business the best. And this is really about putting pen to paper around your cash flow and then talking to your own financial advisor to get some level of third-party independent view on that, and then approaching your bank to see what support is available in the context of working capital or maybe longer-term lending support. So thank you for your attention, and I think I'll hand back to Geraldine.
Thanks very much. Thanks very much, Deirdre. That's great information for people to have. A few questions have come in that maybe you'll be able to help us answer. One came in from an anonymous viewer. Can Deirdre explain the business credit line, please?
Yes, so the business credit line is essentially a demand product as well. it's available over 12 months. A lot of it's really to help with things like seasonal requirements. So it's heavily used in the agricultural industry. So you might need an input from a seasonal perspective of a certain amount of money, and then essentially you pay that off over the 12-month period. So it's akin to it's still working capital, but it's not at the overdraft. You would have a limit, and you would go in and out of that limit. The business credit line is essentially a once-off drawdown, and then you pay it back over a period of 12 months.
Okay, thank you. And another one then came in from John McLaughlin. Good morning, John. When drawing up cash flow, how do you show the debts that you may be building up? For example, deferred rent or loan moratoriums. How do you illustrate that on the cash flow?
Well, essentially the cash flow is cash in, cash out. So you need to, obviously, if you're looking forward, is when is that rent going to be payable? So essentially, if you have a deferred rent arrangement, when you bring that rent back into your cash flow at the time when you actually have to start paying it. So essentially, it's very simply cash in, cash out. So deferral isn't forever. So say it's deferred for a period of 6 months. At the 6 month point, you start to bring that deferred rent back into the equation as a cost to the business.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. And another inquiry, how do you define internationally traded services?
How do we define international trade? Well, essentially, I suppose a business that has income that is not generated in the domestic economy.
Okay.
So if you're selling overseas, and that could be online, or
Okay.
it could be another format.
Great. I have another one in, and I'm looking at my phone because I'm trying to match everything here. AIB are saying that under the SBCI credit guarantee scheme, they will only entertain an application if it has been rejected by another lender. Explain how to get a rejection from another lender, and why would I do that?
Well, essentially, the other lender can be AIB. Essentially, you basically have to apply for your facility and effectively be assessed by the lender under the bank's normal terms and conditions, under the bank's policies for credit applications, which could include, as we talked about, security that you haven't got any security to give. Then when you get that decline, essentially from your own lender, then you can say, well, I'd like to apply under the credit guarantee scheme.
Okay, so that answers that. And AIB are saying that they expect to get a further tranche of funding. Have they got it? And for what type of SBCI loans?
Okay, so in essence, there is 2 further tranches of funding coming down the tracks. So the first is the further tranche of funding under the Covid-19, which is the 3-year facility. So that's the facility that is repurposed specifically for working capital needs as a result of Covid-19. The figure mentioned by the SBCI at this point is 250 million, which will be divided between the 4 banks that administer this scheme. We don't know what the AIB allocation is at this time, but we would expect to have more certainty of that next week, is the sort of timeline indicated. That's down to negotiations between the SBCI and all the banks, and there's formal contracts, etc., in the background there. So that's the first scheme. The second scheme I mentioned was the Future Growth Loan Scheme, which is the longer term scheme. And the number, again, that was launched earlier this year, but it was filled very quickly by all the banks. And that's a facility that's over an 8 to 10-year term. And the number being discussed at the moment on that is in and around 200 million to be available to all the banks. And again, that is still very much being negotiated as to who would qualify, and that most likely won't be available until June.
Okay, thanks, Deirdre. These are from Eddie down in Cork. So good morning, Eddie, to you. There's another one here that maybe needs a little bit of clarification. So if you don't mind, I'll ask you about it. AIB branches are saying that at the moment their allocation of COVID funds has been fully allocated. They are not in a position to consider liquidity loan applications or SBCI COVID loans. Is that correct?
Yes. So currently, as I mentioned, we have an allocation. So the way the SBCI was working to date was you got an eligibility code from the SBCI, and then you came to your bank with the eligibility code. And
right.
Essentially, we put that into our system, and we locked down those funds for you. So you applied for, we essentially, with your eligibility code, we locked down that 50,000 to allow us to get that sanctioned. So at this moment in time, we have a lot of funds locked down, not all sanctioned, for customers who have an eligibility code and came to us.
Okay.
Therefore, our allocation based on eligibility codes is currently full. Having said that, not all of those customers will get sanctioned for various reasons. It may not, the product may not be suitable, etc. So an eligibility code from the SBCI does not guarantee a sanction from your financial provider, just to say that. It is the first step in the process. So some of those funds will ultimately be released because there are some customers who've applied for the Brexit fund, or sorry, the COVID fund rather, who probably won't be able to pay the loan back over 3 years and would be better placed to getting funding under the FGLS scheme, which isn't available yet. And therefore there is a little bit, we're sort of a little bit in the air at the moment on that particular fund. So as I mentioned there, the SBCI are putting further funds into the COVID scheme, which will reopen the COVID scheme. And my understanding is instead of it being based on an eligibility code, first come, first serve, it will be based on sanction. So it will be important to get your information in quickly to your bank so that you can get a full sanction on that facility. So in the interim, what I would say to you is apply, get your eligibility code, come to your bank with your information and start the process of getting a credit approved. And then you will be best placed to avail of the additional funds when they become available.
Deirdre, thanks very much. There's just one final question, if we've time to just take this final question.
Yes.
Are there any financial breaks for business people currently in an insolvency arrangement, or can the business apply for loans or grants?
Well, obviously grants are government supported, so I wouldn't, there certainly are grants out there in the context of the specifics of what's available for a company in insolvency. I just wouldn't have that detail to hand. Okay. In terms of from a banking perspective, I mean, I suppose I'd reiterate that a bank is a lender ultimately, and we're providing debt, and debt has to be repaid. So we're always looking to the business capability of repaying debt. So if a business doesn't have repayment capacity, is not open, is not trading, the bank is not in a position to lend. We do have obviously our financial solutions group, which came out of the last recession. We do have a number of businesses in there with where we've had to restructure debt, etc. But the businesses are still trading and have the ability to repay in some shape or form, or they're selling assets, etc. So I suppose a business that isn't trading, probably debt is not the solution for them.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And a final, this is just a comment. So just for your group, I'm an AIB business and personal banking customer, and have to say I've had superb experiences with them before and during this emergency. I feel reassured, and that's from Catherine Mason.
Well,
so
Catherine, thank you for that.
Catherine, a brownie point now. She'll have to get a star.
That's a star for you, Catherine. We do appreciate that very positive feedback. It is lovely to hear, and very genuinely, we are here to support. And you know, our staff are there in the branches, working remotely, and we're very much appreciative of your positive comments back. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Deirdre. So thanks for answering the questions, and thank you for the feedback and the outline of the services that you're offering. It's good to get it explained, because sometimes reading through brochures and everything, there's just so much stuff. So really appreciate that, and thank you very much. So I'll hand you back now to Michael. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Geraldine and Deirdre, for today. Really appreciate you being here with us today, Geraldine. Thank you for all the information. I'm sure the businesses that are with us today will appreciate and use the resources that we will put on our website shortly after the session. So that's it from us today. Thank you so much to Deirdre Moore and to the team at Griffith College who've been working on this project. Thank you so much to Sinead, also in the background, monitoring the Q&A throughout. So I do hope that you will engage on social media using the hashtag Reboot2020, and also do see the website for the resources that we are posting, including the workbook. And there might be some nuggets from today that you could add to the workbook. So we will see you again next Tuesday at 10:30, the usual time, for our marketing and digital marketing session, which will be presented by myself and Stephen Roberts, the head of marketing at Griffith College. So until then, have a lovely weekend, and we look forward to seeing you then. Stay safe and well, and enjoy your weekend. Thank you very much, Deirdre.
Thank you very much. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye.